I would contrast this with the woman who is the head of a Disney show making a song about how discriminated she is. Like, just the level of vileness to that,
Right.
when we know the practices got her a role that she wouldn't have gotten had she not been a Black woman.
This just dropped, and we were, we usually go about this time length, but we're going to extend this out a little bit because this just dropped from Disney and or from James O'Keefe, and nobody's seen this, so we're going to react to this in real time. James O'Keefe over on X says, breaking, senior vice president at the Walt Disney Company details discriminatory hiring practice. This is a senior vice president. Nobody else is going to tell you this, but they're not considering any white males for the job, says Michael Giordano, the vice president of business affairs. There's no way we're hiring a white male. Giordano reveals Disney used code words and buzzwords to avoid legal action, and even mentions a candidate being rejected for not looking Black enough. My God. Giordano also admits Disney gives bonuses to executives for practicing DEI, agreeing that, quote, diversity helps with financial incentives. Giordano further claims that he's been denied promotions due to his race. This is a multiple part series here. All right. So this is 21 minutes long. We'll watch this in like time and a quarter here to kind of speed it up a little bit. Is everybody ready for this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Let's see what we got. At any time, you guys just tell me to stop and we'll stop.
Certainly, there have been times where, there's no way we're hiring a white male.
Just kind of unspoken.
There are times when it's spoken, but
how would they say it?
There's no way we're hiring a white male. They say,
like straight to you, or okay?
They'd be very careful how they message that to agents.
Let's go back here. I want to see his title real quick.
They say,
like straight to you, or okay?
Senior Vice President and Team Lead, 20th Television, the Walt Disney Company. Okay. I mean, that's crazy. The fact that they would just straight out say it like that.
Okay. They'd be very careful how they message that to agents.
According to these videotapes, Disney blatantly discriminates against white men in particular.
I think I'm sort of like well prepared for it. I'm well positioned for it. But as far as Disney's concerned, I'm a white male. That's not who they're looking to promote them.
As a white guy, even Michael has his own doubts about the possibility for advancement for himself at Disney. In fact, Michael actually got to experience Disney's discrimination against white males firsthand.
I've been at the company for 11 years now, so I have friends in HR and I have friends in those divisions, and they're like, look, nobody else is going to tell you this, Mike, but they're not considering any white males for the shop. They're just not.
Why doesn't he quit and just straight up file a lawsuit? I mean, I guess it's hearsay.
You think he would win? I don't think so at all.
I mean, it's discriminatory, right?
This is in the California court system, right? Like, white people do they genuinely have like a ethno-class system there? I mean, I think that's really what's going on with this cultural appropriation, because everybody knows, like, she can appropriate whatever she wants. She means one specific group in society has extra and additional rules attached to them. And I think it's the same with this stuff.
Let's go and continue.
They even passed over a qualified half-Black person for a promotion because they didn't look Black enough.
We wanted to hire somebody in the department a few years ago now who was half-Black, but didn't appear half-Black. And there was a creative executive who was like, "We're not that's not what's going on." Like, they wanted somebody in meetings who would appear a certain way, and he wasn't going to bring that to the meeting. I mean, it kind of feels like we're.
Real quick, I just Googled this guy, and he has deleted his LinkedIn.
Of course.
He has deleted his LinkedIn.
I feel so bad for this guy. His life is on fire right now. I mean, how do you come back from this?
For sure.
At some point, there's going to be a lawsuit. That's kind of how it feels, just because of,
And that is a lawyer talking. So how does Disney explain pushing these discriminatory practices? They use code words and buzzwords.
I'm guessing that there's acceptable code words and buzzwords that are used to explain what they're looking for. They might say something like, look, we're not looking at the usual suspects for this job. prenup. So it's like not like a legally actionable thing. But everybody knows what it means. They, you know, for writers and actors, you hear all the time, like, you know, I'm looking to hire writers and actors who bring diversity. I'm not looking to bring on any more clients who are.
You know, as an aside here, if somebody's like, how can you tell that Disney's not a meritocracy anymore? Look at the quality of their products. Like, that's how you know it's not a meritocracy on the inside. It is plainly visible to anyone who is consuming their media.
I am fascinated by that. I mean, this is what everybody knows. Everybody knows this, but to hear it said by an executive at the company, and for how long will this person be an executive at the company?
They're almost certainly already fired.
Right. And they'll be like for breaking NDA or whatever, right? That'll be the reason why, because everybody signs an NDA when you go to a company. Can we also talk about the insanity of like going on a date? Like, how many dates do you have to go on with somebody and then just start spilling your guts about this? Like, how stupid are these people? Like, if you know this is bad, but how do you just go on a few dates with somebody and just start spilling your guts about how bad of a company Disney is? I don't know. This always happens with these guys, and it's always like dating stuff. It's weird. Les, do you have any thoughts on this, or is this just more than what we already knew?
I kind of feel like this is already what we knew, but also I do question, why would you spill everything like this? It's very interesting.
Did you guys see that Disney leak that came out, I think, earlier this year that showed they had like different color codes for shows, and a show needed to fit like one of three criterias in order to get made? It needed to have like a certain proportion of a black cast. It had to be based on black themes, or it had to, So like we knew that they were doing this bigotry, you know, and that bigotry was core to, I mean, I guess it was started by a guy who hated the Jews. You know, they're just continuing with their history of bigotry that will be frowned upon in 20, 30 years.
It's just absolutely amazing. Let's continue on.
Welcome to the Disney Tapes. My name is James O'Keefe, standing here in Burbank, California, outside Disney corporate headquarters. This is our first part in a series about blatant discrimination and woke policies at the Walt Disney Company. To say that the Disney Company has had a tumultuous 5 years, well, that would be an understatement. Major box office flops, a losing battle with the state of Florida, and a stock that is one of the worst performers on Wall Street. And as you'll probably conclude from this report, as well as recent shareholder rumblings, almost all of Disney's recent failings are as a result of Bob Iger and the cast of characters here at Disney that are trying to force woke DEI policies into every aspect of Disney's vast media empire. What used to be a highly profitable company by being the gold standard of family entertainment has taken a sharp downturn in the wake of all of its wokeness. Under CEO Bob Iger's leadership, Disney's downfall likely started with the insane hiring practices amongst its executives and creative teams. One of their top senior vice presidents claims that they not only discriminate against white men when recruiting and hiring middle management, they actually give bonuses for hiring and retaining employees that are specifically not white. According to these videotapes, Disney...
I would just like to point this out, right? Change the word white with Latino or anything else, and then tell me that that's not blatant. You know what I mean? Like, that's all you need to do to be like, well, maybe just be like, maybe this is wrong. You know, maybe, just maybe this is wrong. Just switch it. And I feel like that'd be a really great like Twitter account where you see these things where they're complaining about whatever, you know, and you just change the word one time. I mean,
that'd be like a fun AI project. You just make AI run that Twitter account and have it swap everything. Somebody get Grant on speed dial, see what it can do.
I mean, it's very much a white's not welcome here sign, basically, in front of Disney.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, really, do we need to have separate water fountains? You know,
I am very glad they make it easy to boycott their products.
Right. You know, it's funny. I was watching a great movie that ironically Disney has. It's about the women who were like the mathematicians who worked on the NASA stuff in the 60s and the moon landing and such. And, you know, they're all like black women in it and talks about racism in it and stuff. And like the movie it's really, really good. But you look at that and you go like, that wasn't that long ago. It was in, you know, this is in this is in Virginia in the 60s, and they're talking about segregation and stuff. And like that stuff it's like we're only talking about 50, 60 years ago, this stuff happening. And it's like, how are people forgetting how horrible this is? How are people forgetting what a horrible idea this is? Hiring people based off of their race as a whole, instead of a meritocracy. It's insane. It's insane.
Well, it's the way that racism always works, and I think because we're sort of lied to and we're taught about how racism works, is they dehumanize the group that they are going to attack, which I think we saw in the bear in the woods meme that went around. But like, for example, when the Nazis were dehumanizing the Jews, the arguments they used is they said, well, these people are a threat to us, and they said that they have more money than us, and more historic power than us, and therefore are evil, and therefore it's okay to dehumanize them and then attack them. And these are the practices that you're seeing reemerge. This idea that, well, we can be mean to this group because they have some form of additional power or advantage. That is almost always the first argument that the racist clings to.
Seeing that today. Let's go to continue.
Blatantly discriminates against whites, white men in particular. Not a week goes by without a news headline about potential medical supply shortages, threats to our infrastructure or power grid. And you remember what they pulled during the last pandemic. Certain medications were mysteriously...
This looks like an ad real quick. Let's go ahead and skip ahead of that really fast. And thank you, Twitter scrubs. Twitter, as always, the inability to scrub video. I'll be right back. Let's pull that back up. Man, this is, once again, I feel like this is one of those things where it's like we all knew this was happening. But it is. Yeah, go ahead. It's
important to understand how it happened. So one of the things that you guys had in the show notes that we didn't end up covering was sort of the cycle of DEI, that circular cycle. I don't know if you can pull that up. But I think we recently, with the Wendigoon controversy, saw how this works, which is to say that, you know, woke people begin to enter a space, and then they say, now this is our space, and everything that happens in this space must conform to our agenda, and why don't you just go and start something else? And you saw this in the Praise of Shadow controversy, because this guy had declared horror as a progressive space, and that people who were not progressive or even suspected non-progressives, like they had talked to or were friends with people who were not progressives, were not allowed in that space. And we see their ultimate agenda even through that video when he said stuff like he should not be allowed in our spaces or in public in general, which is to say that their ultimate goal is to prevent people with any sort of ideological diversity from having any say in the public sphere, or any ability to contact the public sphere. And they do that through the kindness of lateral, multi-ideological spaces, like originally a company like Disney, welcoming them in, and then they utilize those individuals' kindness to begin to disproportionately cycle out anyone who doesn't think like them. I mean, that's what really DEI is doing when they're giving people these tests and stuff like that they have to score certain scrolls there. They're testing your ideology to make sure that you're on board with this essentially like an organically grown cult. I think it's worth being vigilant about that. If you are running a company, you cannot allow one of these people in your company, because it spreads from there.
Right. Let's go to continue here and see where this goes.
Today, when you use code OMG,
we have a diversity, equity, inclusion department who's very involved in like setting standards to make sure that our shows have diversity.
Do you think like Bob has a say in the diversity stuff when they're casting people? Like
100%.
So what,
he gives the directive. I mean,
for each show,
not that specifically, but like, hey, I want every show to have substantial.
Iger even has a chief diversity officer. Now, up until recently, that was Latondra Newton, who played a big part in dragging Disney full bore into its losing culture war by promoting discriminatory hiring practices and introducing gay, lesbian, transgender, non-binary, and other characters into Disney's children's animated series and films.
Is it like an all-across thing, like all of HR, or there's like that one specific person that kind of like, because I forgot the lady's name, she's the head of the,
I know you're talking about the head of the
African-American lady, So is that like kind of her deciding?
She oversees a lot of that for sure. but it's pretty broad, I would say. There are other people in HR who are also focused on that. I would say a relatively large percentage of our top writer creators happen to be women. And a lot of
Just by happenstance.
I mean, like, just like if you say whatever, I don't know, whatever 10 or 15% of the population is gay, I would guess that 30 to 35% of our top writers are, gay. And so a lot of them lean into trans stories more than the average straight writer would.
It's almost like it's not representative of reality. Almost at all,
Yeah. Well, I mean, and an interesting thing here. I just wish she would ask him, why hasn't Kathleen Kennedy been fired? Like, that's the core thing I want to know. Like, genuinely, like, even with all this wokeness, why hasn't she been fired?
Because she's got dirt on somebody so
She must.
badly. Some type of thing that happened years ago that she knows everything about, some type of like maybe sexual assault. I'm just guessing here, but she's got something big.
I think you're right. And that leads me to think that there are some people high up at Disney who are likely PDA files. That's probably my guess.
Yeah.
Let's go to continue here.
And in an odd twist, you have to be a white Jewish guy to be considered for a C-suite job. More on that next week. But now let's meet Los Angeles-based Michael Giordano, a white male and Walt Disney Senior Vice President of Business Affairs.
I do like business affairs, so like negotiations for television.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Nice. That's really cool.
Like on the creative side, so a lot of it is like knowing like the guild agreements and the union agreements and everything. Like make offers for the writers and the actors who are going to be out working on the show, and the producers and the directors, and try to like get to a place where we can be able to deal with them, help the production to budget, and so much of my job is just the negotiate really. And then other people are doing kind of the contracts. So,
Oh wow! So yeah, what's the negotiating like?
I'm like sitting down trying to figure out, okay, what are we gonna pay this actor for this role? What do we think they want? What
Oh wow!
Strategize that. Everything from how you produce a show, how you distribute a show, how you exhibit a show, how you market a show, things like that. All of the negotiations and deal making.
Yeah.
One, well, actually two of our brave undercover journalist and American Swiper investigative reporters met Michael on the dating app Hinge. And aside from this story, which focused on Disney's overt discrimination against white men, you'll see later on in this report, it'll be quite entertaining, Michael turns out to be quite the ladies' man.
How long has it been on?
90 Dragoons came in with a $15 direct donation. Says, it never ceases to amaze me that James O'Keefe's journalists can convince corporate agents to spill all of the beans of all the crimes they do by just meeting them for a drink, batting their eyes and asking them, so how is work going? Like, dude, and that's kind of where I'm at, right? With all this, it just seems, it is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. And you're 100% right.
I don't think it's amazing. I think it makes all the sense in the world. These are some businessmen who never have any time to actually go on real dates. They don't talk to women very often. And so when they finally do, they just let it all out. And it just happens to be beautiful women undercover who hears it all with a little camera and microphone going, and how's that make you feel? Boobs out. Done. Easy.
And I think a lot of this is normalized for them. Like, they don't see this as being the evil bigotry it appears to us, because to them, the white males are justly an underclass. Like,
it's virtuous for them.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yes. They're correcting the wrongs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lads, I do think there is something to what you just said, though. The idea that that maybe these guys, they don't have time. That's why they're on the dating app. That's why they're getting together, and they're trying to like.
These are big stress heads. Super stress heads. Look at their positions, right? Obviously, anybody in that position is going to be a stress head. So,
I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of this just comes down to they want to get some pussy.
They
right?
want their balls to be empty.
Yes, and they're willing to say whatever it takes to get that done.
Yep.
All right.
Well, I mean, also be aware of how weird this is that a guy his age and at his wealth isn't married. Like, historically, you never would have had that. Again, I'm glad that these people are removing themselves from the gene pool, because they're not healthy for society.
Let's go to continue.
Like dating out.
Not very long.
Have you been going out?
Not a lot. Not a lot.
Anything like worth?
You know what's funny? No.
Let's dig right into Disney's blatant practices of discrimination. If you're wondering how Disney as a company looks at race, gender, and discrimination in the hiring process, about how they recruit and hire talent, look no further.
I think there are times when it's like so front and center. It's like great because that's the focus. You know, like we have so many shows where we're casting and we're like, yeah, we're not even going to see certain people for it because we need that particular role to.
Yeah. So is it intentional that they want they only look for diverse candidates for certain roles?
Yeah. I think there's certainly a belief that it's just good for society and a big move, but there's also.
Bingo. Nailed it right there. It's good for society that they do this. This is the virtuous aspect of all this. Malcolm, you were talking about that.
Yeah.
But
again, then he says that they make a lot of money. They know it doesn't make money. Like, do they still think that this is working?
I mean, there has to be some metric that they're seeing that says this is positive for the business. There has to be. Like, these companies don't work just off a hunch. They work off data. So that's what I'm most curious about. Like, what data are they looking at that's saying this is a good idea?
I think that in some way it kind of does work, because isn't there that sweet ESG money that if you do XYZ, you'll get some money in reimbursement? So maybe they're looking into that.
Potentially.
Or they just want to drive everything out so that way everything will have a shit value and they could just buy stuff. But like, I don't know why they would do it to themselves. I don't know. It's Disney.
Let's go continue.
So a belief that like we're going to make more money if we appeal to a wider variety of people, and it's a good thing. We have shareholders too, and so diversity helps with that.
Diversity helps with financial incentive.
Yeah.
How long has Disney really been pushing this? The last 4 or 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Blabs, will you just do some quick digging on Disney's revenue from, let's do the last 10 years of revenue from 2014 to 2024.
It's definitely very recent because I remember when Owl House was canceled, one of the reasons for its cancellation was the focus on gay characters. And Owl House, by the way, was great. So that was an example of when the writers were still going against the tide. So it really only began after Owl House.
When was Owl House?
Let's see.
It's okay. Well, while that is searched, let's continue on to this.
So is it like, do you think it's more so on that side, or are you using like any good prices get put to use? Or
I think it gives them regardless, but I think that there are like even conservative people who may not lean into it can easily make the argument that like we make more money when we appeal to a wider variety of people, and that means diversity.
Yeah,
there's a real focus on every show, and I'm sure the movies too. That I don't deal with that side. So to make sure that the writers' room has a real diversity, not just gender or sexual orientation and ethnicity, but making sure that they're hiring some writers who have certain disabilities where they wouldn't hire so there's kind of a really broad look whenever we're doing hiring to make sure.
Yeah.
So they talk a big game about DEI, but do they actually do it? Apparently so. They even passed over a qualified half-black person for a promotion because they didn't look black enough.
Yeah.
We had a situation where we wanted to hire somebody in the department a few years ago now, who was half black, but didn't appear half black. And there was a creative executive who was like, "We're not that's not what's going on."
They wanted the full.
They wanted somebody in meetings who would appear a certain way, and he wasn't going to bring that to the meeting.
And so this is.
Go ahead, Malcolm. I see.
I love that we're back in this stage where, you have sort of different racial casts, and the people who are half black are sort of in this middling cast. He's too white for this. We can't. Which is just fascinating to me that they've gone, just full racist with this. Owl House, by the way, was actually running until 2023, so last year, but the cancellation came midway through season 2, as I remember, which was 2021. So sometimes they cancel things before the full season is ready.
Right. Wow. I mean, just absolutely amazing stuff. that they're so blatant about it. Well, he does. Once again, replace that with anything. He didn't look X enough. What insanity is this? My gosh. And once again, this is all hearsay, right? This could just be some guy puffing out his chest trying to tell big stories. But at the same time, it's like, what? The crazy thing is that this is believable in this society that we live in right now. And if I'm whoever that is, if that guy found out, he would own Disney by the time he was done with this report. Because if it ever got back to that guy that he was passed up because he wasn't black enough, wow.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Let's continue.
This is like on the
corporate
side, like the business side.
I never understood that. Is it like, 'cause I know a lot, like I have like a lot of black friends who like are not as dark as like, so do they care about that, or is like the ethnicity actually?
They say they don't care about it, but the truth is, to some extent, they do. If you're mixed, but you don't look black at all, which sometimes happens,
Yeah.
then they're like, oh, I'm not so sure. But if you're mixed and you can tell they're somebody's part black, but they're not like that black, then okay, that was so crazy.
I just want to say this. Read what's on the screen right here. But if you're mixed and you can tell they're somebody's part black, but they're not like that black. Like, how unbelievable. Like, what year is this that we're living in? This is unreal that this guy just said. That black. Wow.
And this is why you need an anti-DEI consultancy firm that can go through and clean up this mess, because this is systemic discrimination at all levels of the company. Systemic bigotry.
Well, they're somebody's part black, but they're not like that black. So, okay, that was so crazy.
But apparently, Meghan Markle is black enough. You can't make this up.
So would like Meghan Markle, who's pretty white,
Right? Yeah.
would she be considered?
She would still be,
diverse,
yeah.
or
Huh? As a white guy, even Michael has his own doubts about the possibility for advancement for himself at Disney, saying, quote, "As far as Disney is concerned, I'm a white male."
Now I'm like a half step below a department head. I have a team under me, but I don't oversee a whole department. And I'd like to oversee everyone, whether that's at Disney or have a Disney.
Okay. Do you think that you'll have opportunity at Disney?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I think I'm sort of like well prepared for it. I'm well positioned for it. But as far as Disney's concerned, I'm a white male. And that's not who they're looking at promoting.
In fact, Michael actually got to experience Disney's discrimination against white males firsthand.
So,
Oh, do you think that has a lot to do with it?
not a lot, but it's something to do with it.
Really?
Yeah.
If it has anything to do with it, there's the issue. That's I don't know how much more clear you can make it if there's anything to do with it.
Well, and I would contrast this with the woman who is the head of a Disney show making a song about how discriminated she is. Like, just the level of vileness to that,
Right.
when we know the practices got her a role that she wouldn't have gotten had she not been a black woman.
I mean, and you're right. This is both sides of the coin right here. You have somebody who is literally a multimillionaire who has their role without an audition, complaining about oppression. While this guy's like, I'm just trying to get hired, but they're not. I'm just trying to move up the company, but they won't let me. Oh wow!
But I
What
mean,
do
we
you
know
think
that
the
all this.
competition is?
Go ahead, Malcolm.
Well, I'm just saying, like, none of this is particularly outlandish to me. I mean, like, we know that Disney's doing this. Like, you're not surprised by this, I'm sure.
No. That's what I'm saying. I think that it's like everybody knows this is happening. It's just a matter of hearing somebody say it, and for you to feel that disgusting vomit and that vomit just coming up from your stomach. That you just like, this is disgusting. That's
well,
what it
no,
is.
and this is something that I think a lot of white guys have heard, especially if they're, have access to like high level ability to get hired at stuff. I hear all the time, like as I was mentioning earlier, oh, don't apply to this if you're a white guy. And I think that progressives hear this and they just don't register, oh my God, like this is systematic bigotry. And so they don't realize that they're hearing this all the time. But I think most white guys have heard this, you know, I'd say maybe once every 3 years these days.
It's not the first and probably won't be the last time either. Let's go and continue.
Oh, I mean, I've been up for jobs internally against people who have less experience than me, and you know, haven't gotten.
Okay. And they were given to somebody else. Do you think it had something to do with their?
In 1 or 2 cases, you know, I was told very explicitly that it is. Yeah.
Explicitly how? What did they tell you?
I mean, you know, I've been at the company for 11 years now, so I have friends in HR and I have friends in those divisions, and they're like, look, nobody else is going to tell you this, Mike, but they're not considering any white males for a shot. They're just not. That's what they want.
And so,
you know, you see people who are critics of videos like this, and they say, well, they're selectively edited, right? They're selectively edited. Like this guy just went on a rant for 2 minutes talking about this with no edits at all, with questions in between. It's like he's literally laying it out. The only thing that you could potentially question is this guy who he says he is? Does this guy actually work for the company? What is his experience? Because that's the one thing, we're taking them at their word. This person apparently works at Disney. Up until 20 minutes ago, I had no idea who this guy was, right? So we're taking him as his word that this person is real. Right. But when you say, oh, it's selectively edited, literally every piece of media that has had a single slice associated with it has been edited selectively. Whether you're watching the news, whether you're watching something on YouTube, whether you're watching something on TikTok, everything has been selectively edited, whether you like it or not. Sorry. Drives me crazy. Let's go to continue.
So it's probably fair that Disney would say, we don't want a white person to play this role.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're very careful about they're very careful about messaging because they don't want to get to discrimination in either direction. But certainly there have been times where, there's no way we're hiring a white male person.
Just kind of unspoken.
There are times when it's spoken, but
how would they say it?
No way we're hiring a white male person. They say,
like straight to you, or okay?
They'd be very careful how they message that to agents,
in like email or whatever.
After getting a dose of Disney's discrimination himself, it seems like Michael may have been hit with a reality check that discrimination against people based upon race is probably not cool.
I mean, it kind of feels like at some point there's going to be a lawsuit. That's kind of how it feels, just because of,
And that is a lawyer talking. Now, could it get worse? It actually does. Not only does Disney discriminate against white men, it gives management bonuses to hire DEI candidates over white men, totally disregarding their level of qualification, as long as they're not white. You heard me correctly. A part of some executives' compensation package is based on hiring and retaining Black hires. We saw this in the case of IBM. America First Legal has launched a lawsuit. Many people coming out of the woodwork from IBM, from these Fortune 500 companies, all saying they've experienced this. We are certain to hear from people inside Disney who've made these claims. Many people here in Los Angeles, here in Hollywood, very afraid of Disney, very afraid of retaliation against their creative productions or movies or films or jobs for speaking about this truth. But if you have been a victim of discrimination, please reach out to OMG or Citizen Journalism Foundation, and we will try to get you representation to get your rights back.
Do you think that it's going to take one big lawsuit? Is it going to be a class action, or is it going to be a singular lawsuit like the Gina Carano, right? Her lawsuit, that's been the big talking point. With Gina Carano, is her lawsuit, if it continues, which I haven't heard anything about that, because the judge was apparently looking at throwing it out based off of a Disney request. I don't think we have any news on that. But really, like, the Carano lawsuit could actually be a really big turning point in this, or could it not? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Malcolm?
I agree. I think I'm going, Malcolm.
I'll let you go.
Yeah, I think that if this lawsuit of Gina's continues, then I think it'll open up the gates for possible lawsuits or class action lawsuits to continue. But if it's thrown out, I don't think there's a whole lot to go on.
Yeah, so my read of this is, given how big Disney is in terms of local power plays, and given that this is the dominant cultural faction anyway, it's going to be pretty hard to get a law firm that can actually go to bat on an issue like this. So I do not think that the tide turns because of any form of a lawsuit here. I just don't see it being one. Keep in mind, you have to win in the California court system. That's just likely not going to happen, especially the LA system. Like, these are incredibly activist driven courts. So what I do think, like, if this actually does retreat, I think it will be driven by a share owners push, which is to say, you get an anti-DEI consulting firm like ours that's meant to, remove the bigotry from these sorts of companies that is leading to the poor financial performance, which we are absolutely seeing from Disney right now, to go in and clean house. I could see activist investors spearheading something like that, and that being the real turning point. I mean, I think it's the dollars lost that's going to drive this, not a random legal suit in an already hostile environment in a company with infinitively deep pockets.
I think that's the biggest thing is the money that Disney has. I mean, if they go to battle over this, if this went to court, they're fighting for their company's life at this point, and they will exhaust all resources based off of the decisions that they've made here. There's only a couple minutes left of this. Let's go ahead and finish this up and see where this goes.
Privacy Patch, unplug.com/OMG.
I mean, HR keeps a huge spreadsheet. Yeah.
What kind of spreadsheet?
Oh, I haven't seen it exactly, but I mean, literally, they have stats. 17% of our executives at this level identify as XYZ. 40% of our executives at this level identify as, they have goals that they're trying to. They want a certain percentage of diversity here, a certain percentage of diversity there.
But are these these are open goals? Because you're saying they can't say it in such specific terms. So are they open goals?
They are open goals at a senior enough level.
So how does Disney explain pushing these discriminatory practices to the people that they work with? Well, according to Michael Giordano, it seems like it's a sensitive issue, and they use code words and buzzwords.
I'm guessing that there is a acceptable code words and buzzwords that are used to explain what they're looking for. They might say something like, look, we're not looking at the usual suspects for this job. So it's not a legally actionable thing. So everybody knows what it means.
According to Michael, even Disney's human resources agencies are on board with these practices. All right, guys, do you know what the code words are for the discriminatory hiring practices? Do you work in HR? No? You familiar with the buzzwords? They don't know what I'm talking about now, but they will soon.
The writers and actors, I'll hear all the time, I'm looking to hire writers and actors who bring diversity. I'm not looking to bring on any more clients who are so there's definitely that focus.
Disney even has an internal organization such as 20th Action Group, whose sole purpose is to promote discriminatory DEI hiring practices and to push bizarre characters and storylines on children. The question is, can the people just come to work, make their cartoons, and do the discrimination elsewhere? But apparently not on CEO Bob Iger's watch. So how is prioritizing these DEI practices over hiring merit-based talent worked out for Disney shareholders, you might ask? Well, over the past 5 years, the S&P index is up over 88%, and Disney is down almost 30%, making that once golden brand one of Wall Street's biggest disappointments. Yes, the disaster that Disney has become is probably the most glaring example of what happens when you prioritize DEI over talent content creators and executives who truly know how to build value. So will Disney turn it all around and hire or promote based upon merit? We shall see. This is just part one. We got another tape coming out next week. This is a multiple part series. I spoke with Michael Giordano. You'll see that soon.
I always love the confrontation. Oh, this is where it gets good.
We are.
You have nothing to say?
I haven't seen you. Do you work for Disney? I'm not gonna. Is this you right here?
And hopefully we get a comment from the CEO, Bob Iger, reporting from Burbank, California, outside the Walt Disney Company. This is James O'Keefe with OMG.
All right. There's always the confrontation.
That face, he was like, ee! That's like that The Office meme of Steve Carell's character going, same thing.
I in his videos, I do hate the cringe confrontation stuff. Like yelling at the random people on the street. Like, come on, guy. Like, you got the piece. Let's just hammer home
Be
something
civil.
like this. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, God, I can't. But nothing in this surprises me really. I think anyone who's worked in corporate America knows that there is systemic bigotry encoded into hiring policies and promotion policies at pretty much any large bureaucracy, whether or not, I mean, you're going to find these same practices at Google. You're going to find these same practices at IBM. You're going to find these same practices likely even at organizations like McKinsey.
You know, we said this a little bit ago. This is something everybody knew, but to hear it so blatantly said, it's just like, man, I don't know how anybody who is anti-bigot can potentially support that company, you know? And that's the most amazing thing about it. So
it's going to be very interesting in the next couple of days. All the Disney shills, what are they going to do? Are they going to stay silent? Are they going to say something? Are they actually going to be like, actually, guys, this is not okay. This is racism. It'll be very interesting and very telling what happens in the next couple of days, I think.
I mean, this is a perfect political climate for this to come out in. It's sort of, we've seen the pendulum begin to really swing back in the other direction this year on a number of major issues with things like the Cass report. I don't know if you guys have covered that on your show, but it's been pretty shattering in terms of how far things are swinging in the other direction or how quickly they are.
Well, I guess we'll see kind of what the response is to this. I'm sure Disney's going to put out some sort of blanket statement about it being, it's all deceptively edited, blah, 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 blah. And you'll hear all the talking points that these big corporations always put out. And how can you trust, James O'Keefe and blah, it's like, how about you keep your executives on a leash and have them not sing like birds when they go on a date? I'm just going to throw it out there.
It reminds me of, I had shown somebody this study, and there was a guy who was reviewing a study, and I sent them to his Substack, and they go, "Oh, I can't read that Substack because the guy is alt-right. Like, don't you know he's a famous alt-right scientist?" And I was like, but it's data. Like, what do you mean? You can't look at the data because it's being presented by someone who, your overlords have identified as alt-right. And I think that we'll see the same with this, because the recordings were taken by somebody like him. A certain portion of the world's just going to pretend like they don't exist.